from Zin Zen Yoga. This is a place where I not only teach weekly classes, but I also teach an assortment of workshops. And one of those workshops is on arm balances. So today's video is all about getting to play around with certain poses, certain movements that might bring us a little more strength, might bring us a little more stability, maybe might just get us into the right mindset. So maybe somewhere down the line, we can start playing around with bouncing on our hands. So I first have to caution you, when it comes to the quote-unquote advanced poses in yoga, we have to be very careful because those advanced poses give us the ability to time travel. And I say that because when we're playing around with those advanced poses, and you probably have a good idea what I'm talking about, all those Instagram-worthy shots, people bouncing on their hands or their head or their foot's behind their neck, we throw ourselves into the future where we can do that pose, where we can just fly onto our hands or float onto our head or whatever it is we're hoping to do. Or maybe it's an alternative universe where we can just nail that pose on the first try. We don't need to do any strength and conditioning. We don't need to ready the mind. We don't need to do anything. It's just boom, crow pose, headstand, handstand, whatever it is we're doing. And we have to be very careful. Because once we start time traveling, or once we start traveling to alternative universes, we are no longer in the present moment. We are no longer listening to our bodies in the present moment, which means we're probably going to throw that body into whatever shape we're hoping to attain, and we're kind of hoping for the best. And that is where injuries happen. So really, I cannot stress enough, especially when it comes to things like balancing on our hands. Being mindful with where you are in the present moment, not where you wish you were or you think you should be, but where you actually are. And I say that especially for arm balances because, to put it very simply, our hands are not our feet and our shoulders are not our hips, which sounds really weird, but you have to really think about it that way. Evolutionarily speaking, we are meant to stand on our feet. We are meant to bear a lot of weight on our hips. Which is why we can kind of mindlessly stand around, we can mindlessly walk, we can do all sorts of things without really putting too much thought into it, purely because, evolutionarily speaking, that's what we're meant to do. Our hands and our shoulders were not created to do that. In fact, when you look at our hands, right where the heel bone would be, our calcaneus, we have basically the opposite of a heel bone, we have a tunnel. So that means whereas with our feet we can kind of mindlessly put weight into our heel bones, we really don't want to do that to our wrists. And likewise, we have to be very careful about bearing weight in the shoulders because they are not designed for that same amount of stability that the hips are. So that quick and dirty anatomy lesson is needed because we really need that mindfulness. We can't just kind of go into a crow pose and hope for the best. We could really do a number on our wrists, we could really do a number on our shoulders. And that is where all these exercises that we are going to do will come into play. So we're going to start first with those wrists, the opposite of our feet. And we're going to start first coming into a tabletop position. So we can get onto that tabletop position and we can take a moment letting those hands be underneath our shoulders. Great time to check in if we're getting any wrist strain here, if we're feeling pinching sensations. We want to walk those hands out. And we really just want to focus then on that strength in the palm, strength in the wrist, strength in the forearms. That's just where we are in our practice. So if it works for us, those hands are underneath our shoulders. And we let those fingers spread nice and wide. And if we find that we can't spread the fingers comfortably wide, we might need to change our stance. Maybe the hands are a little wider than hips, or shoulder width distance. And we'll give ourselves a moment to do what I call gecko asana. So we can press those finger pads into the mat. It's kind of like a gecko is suction cupping those fingers onto the wall. And maybe we play around with pressing one at a time. Maybe we play around with pressing all of them. Maybe we press them into the mat and then let them travel towards the center as if we had a piece of paper under that hand and we're about to crumple it up. And so we play around with that. We're just building up a little strength. If we'd like to move on from that, we can put a bend into the elbows, and you might notice those elbows naturally start to splay out to the side. We can take those elbows, letting them splay out to the side ever so slightly, and then actively rotate them in so they're shoulder width distance. For some of us, we're going to feel some stretch along the upper back, maybe even some strengthening. And can we keep all of that in place while we do maybe a little cat pose, where we're starting to press our back towards the ceiling. Maybe we're letting that head drop down. And then we can let that relax. Maybe we let everything relax. We take a moment in cow pose, gentle counter pose. And maybe we do that again. We're pressing through those fingers, rotating those elbows into shoulder width distance, maybe a little rounding up that back. And then we'll let that relax. And then we can come into a cow pose. Maybe we do that one more time where we come back to table. We set up that gecko asana. We rotate those elbows in. We press up towards cat. And we can let that relax. And great time to see how's the wrist doing. We want to roll them out. We listen to our wrists. It's not fun to get wrist pain. And then we're coming into our downward facing dog. So we're going to walk those hands out. We're going to curl those toes. And we can start to shift those hips back, and maybe the knees come up, and we start to straighten those legs. Great time to check in. Let's pedal out the heels or swivel the hips. If it works for us here, we're letting those fingers spread wide. We're pressing those finger pads into the mat here. Again, maybe we put a little softness into those elbows and actively rotate them in, feeling that broadness across the back. And then we'll come into a few plank poses. So with this plank pose, we want to start with soft knees, and that's just letting the lower back relax. We'll start to press through those feet. We'll start to roll over, rise and roll over into plank. Pausing here, maybe a little pressing through the hands so it almost feels like a cat pose. And then we'll recoil back to our downward facing dog. We can soften those knees and then re-straighten. Maybe we do that 2 more times. Again, a little active rolling those elbows in. We'll roll the body to plank. And then we can come back. 1 more time. Again, maybe that pause to rotate those elbows in. We'll roll to plank. And then do 1 chaturanga push-up. So what we're going to do is we're dropping those knees down. We're letting the lower belly press in and up to protect that lower back. What we're going to do is we're going to start to lower down, those elbows bending directly back. They're staying at shoulder width distance. We're only going to go down as low as we can before those elbows start to splay out on us. Seeing if we can even catch it before they do. And then we'll come all the way up. And we'll give ourselves a moment in child's pose. So just adjusting those knees however we need to. We let ourselves sink back and down. Few deep breaths here. Again, maybe a little rolling out of those wrists, giving ourselves a moment to reset. Maybe those palm muscles are feeling a little sore, so we're making fists and straightening those fingers out. Few more breaths here. And then as we're ready, we can come up to that down dog. And then we can find a forward fold at the top of our mat. So we can just walk those feet in, maybe nice deep bends into the knees so those hands can stay where they are. And then we just give ourselves a moment here, maybe a little head shake, a little head nod. And then we can come up to stand, a little pressing through the feet. And we give ourselves a moment here to reorient. Maybe those hands come to the heart. And maybe that's where we stay. Knowing that this is not a video guaranteed to get us into crow pose in 10 minutes or less. This is a chance to play around. Keyword there is play. If we'd like to go further, we can come into our wide-legged stance. We can spread those legs out in the manner that works, seeing if it's comfortable to let those toes face forward. And then we'll come into our wide-legged forward fold. So we can start with a nice deep bend in the knees, so just let that back be nice and relaxed, and we can walk the hands down. We see if it's comfortable to plant those hands onto the floor. So maybe we stay here again, spreading those fingers wide, little gecko asana. Maybe we're putting that bend in the elbows, actively rotating them into shoulder width distance. If we feel like there's further for us to go, maybe we shift a little forward. And maybe we shift back. Maybe we shift forward, and we come up onto our tiptoes, and then we come back. Maybe we shift forward, we come up onto the tiptoes, maybe even a little pressing of the hands like we're coming into a cat variation, and then we come back. So maybe we just continue to do this. This is a great precursor to the arm balances. It's also a great precursor to handstands. Again, knowing that we're just having a chance to play around. We don't have to move on to the next thing if we're not ready. If we feel like we're ready to play around with our crow pose, we can do so. So maybe we first and foremost come out of that wide-legged forward fold, we come back up. And then we'll start in our squatting position, Malasana. So we position the legs however we need to. We listen to the bone structure. For a lot of us, our toes are going to start pointing out. We start to sink those hips back. We might find that we're one of those people that we need something to sit on. Maybe we get a few blocks. Maybe we have a stool of some nature. So we give ourselves a moment here. Maybe we bring the hands to the heart. Maybe we just enjoy the hip opener this gives us. I mean, how many times are we really in this position? Unless we're in yoga, not men. If we'd like to play around with crow, maybe we bring those hands down. Again, fingers are spreading wide. A little gecko asana, maybe a little press into those finger pads in, and maybe towards the center. Maybe we shift forward. Maybe we shift back. We might find we're ready to shift forward, and maybe we come up onto the tiptoes. It looks like we're about to become a frog. And then we come back. Again, maybe we come forward, come up onto the tiptoes, and maybe those feet walk into the center. And then we come back. And maybe that's where we stay for a while. Or maybe we come in, we do a little rotating of those elbows in, maybe even the hands or the knees press into the arms press into the hands. We roll forward, pressing through those finger pads. We don't want to collapse weight into those wrists. And we do what is called the dancing crow. So maybe we shift to one side and one foot comes up, and that comes down, and the other foot comes up. And we might be here for quite some time. Our crow pose might be dancing for days, weeks, months, years, forever. We might find we can start to slow down that dance. So maybe one foot comes up and there's a little bit of hang time before the other foot comes up and that foot drops down. Maybe we get a little more hang time, a little more hang time. And then eventually, maybe both feet hover. Maybe not. We want to be careful, though, not to jump into this. If you're jumping into this, essentially hopping into crow, you're going to shock your muscles, you're going to shock your joints, you're going to shock your mind. So speaking of mind, there's a reason why I have a stack of blankets in front of me. One of the things that can really get in the way for us when it comes to crow pose is our mind. We're afraid of falling out, we're afraid of falling flat on our face. So that's when we can take a stack of blankets, or maybe it's a really big pillow. We bring it in front of us. We get ready to come into our crow pose, and maybe we intentionally go a little too far and we face plant. Oh, that wasn't so bad, now was it? And so maybe when we realize that it's really not going to be that bad if we fall out, we shift forward, we shift back. We shift forward, maybe that's pressing through the hands, maybe we're doing that active rotating in. Maybe we're dancing our crow pose. Maybe the dance starts to slow down. Maybe we get hang time. Maybe the feet float. Maybe they don't. Maybe we can get the toes to touch. Maybe they don't. We come out. We give ourselves a moment to settle, and again, we're playing around. This is not a chance to test how good we are at yoga and see if we can pass or fail. We're getting to be curious about what our body can do. And can we do that without judgment? That's the real advanced yoga in my eyes. So that's it for now, my lovelies. I hope you had fun. I hope you got a chance to play around. And